As a researcher, if I believe that I can research the comments under the Guardian newspaper articles, I think they're fascinating, I think they're great. I wouldn't necessarily go and get ethics approval for that because I believe that that's public, but it is a community, right? So then, question is raised. Do people agree? Is that a community or is that similar to letters to the editor? And if it's letters to the editor who has copyright and IP, and I'll let you know that I've tried to track that down because I looked at letters to the editor and no one could tell me, including the university's IP people who went into it in some detail and they decided that no one did, which I found fascinating. Compared to a forum or a community where you have to log in, compared to Facebook interactions. And this is why I don't know, basically, and I don't think researchers know, and this is why we're having this discussion, right? What equals private? What equals semi-private? What is group privacy? And so who needs to give consent for people to enter and do research?
But how about the instance then that Bronwyn was describing to us where there's a community group posted information about their test results coming back and maybe some information about those test results naively because they don't understand what the privacy buttons are, settings are that you click within the system. I mean, Bronwyn, did you want to sort of expand on that perhaps?
Yeah, I think that is quite interesting because some people do have an expectation that what they put on their Facebook page is private and private and available only to those people they choose and select. So if you, as a researcher, make that public outside of that space, that is a real issue. Because there are closed groups, there are privacy settings, there are all sorts of things. So that the whole idea that if it's on social media, it's just public and open is a little problematic, really. There is rules and regulations and norms around those kinds of spaces as well. And I think sometimes we often think digital world, offline, online world, these are different spaces, and they're not because they're inhabited by real people with agency, with real bodies and real minds, and some of the things that we see on social media literally mirror what we see off social media as well in terms of social concerns and behaviours and norms and stuff. So yeah, I don't think it's a matter of if you post that it is just publicly available for everyone to use. I think that's a real worry, and we should be worried if that be the case.
If people are consciously thinking about the privacy and they're consciously making a decision based on what is clear to them, then we could say yes, they're giving informed consent. But unfortunately, Facebook doesn't make it easy. And in actual fact, it tries to trick you to be very not private. And a simple example is when they brought in tagging. You could be tagged in photos that you didn't want to be tagged in. And Facebook didn't allow you to quickly go in and change that. And I mean, now it's got those settings. But I think as researchers, we do have to accept they don't do it well. And therefore, it's our job as a researcher to make sure that our participants, if it's suitable to the research question, are in a position to make not just consent, but very informed consent. And I think then if they can't, you do have to ask yourself, should I be doing this?
It is very possible to develop networks of trust and consent and real relationships and emotional connections with people online, which means that actually it's a nonsense to say that everything published online is open slather. It really isn't.
I think there are two principles under the national statement that come to play here. Firstly, that the researcher has the responsibility to ensure that the participant understands that they're participating in the research. I think publicly disclosing it on Facebook doesn't satisfy that criteria. And the second thing is that they have sufficient information to understand the proposed research and the implications of their participation in that research. And again, public airing on Facebook does not satisfy the national statement in that second regard.
How does that relate to Bridie's research, where publicly disclosing, the Hawthorne effect, where publicly disclosing actually impacts adversely the research?
The research question specifically was about populations. It wasn't about individuals. So In our case, we had a very thorough dialogue with our ethics committee. This was a conversation that we had together with the ethics committee. This wasn't a decision that we made. We made this together, that because the research question was about a population-based measure, that therefore gaining individual consent, because we were not treating each Twitter post as an individual. We weren't doing any sort of things to check if they were repeating more than once. We weren't looking at that at all. So, and that's when it came back to the research question, and we wouldn't be able to. We didn't need to know each individual to answer the research question, and having the individual give consent wasn't adding to the integrity of the research or maintaining the integrity. Instead, actually, it would undermine the research question. And it is very acceptable in research to not always get informed consent. That's acceptable. It happens a lot. But you have to clearly justify why that is the best approach. So.